Good morning. It is Wednesday, the 21st of February 2024. You're watching Labour Social, me, Graham Hughes. Welcome to everyone in the chat. And today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. First of all, we're going to start with talking about Brexit. Okay, we're going to come on to the Gaza ceasefire vote in a little bit. But first, let's talk a little bit about Brexit because there was a news report today in the Guardian newspaper showing what we all knew would happen. From the moment that Michael Gove misspoke when he said that we were sick of experts, what he meant actually is that we were sick of exports. And it turns out that in the last 3 years, the additional red tape thrown up by Brexit has cost exporters, British businesses trying to sell their wares in the European Union, it has cost them £170 million, 58 million in the last year alone. This is for paperwork. This is for veterinary examinations of any produce going into the EU that we didn't need to do before. We could just send it. We used to be able to send anything to anywhere in the EU as long as it was to EU standards, in the same way that you send something in the post from Liverpool to Manchester. You paid the postage. You paid to courier it to where it needed to go. That was it. You didn't have to do all this absolute nonsense about having to get a vet involved and having to pay extra money to brokers and customs agents. And then you have to wait for, 2 days for your number to come through so you can actually leave the UK and go into the EU with your products. This is the exact opposite of what we were promised by the Brexiters. I mean, to say we were lied to is somewhat of an understatement, because this is lying on a biblical scale. It's beyond wrong. I mean, it is something that I think the people that told everyone to vote for Brexit, I think it's something that they should be in jail for, to be quite frank. What they've done to this country and the amount of money they've cost. I mean, imagine if you went around farms, okay? I'll give you an example. Imagine if you went around farms, right, for 3 years, robbing them, robbing the tractors, robbing their combine harvesters, breaking into their homes and stealing their precious keepsakes, stealing their flat screen TVs. You went around robbing farmers, and over 3 years, you managed to rob £170 million worth of stuff from British farmers. That was it. That was your target. And I'm not saying all this money has come out the pocket of farmers. It hasn't. It's also food producers as well. So it's companies that actually take ingredients and make something like biscuits or whatever you make. But let's just concentrate on farmers. Imagine if there was a gang of toffs roaming the countryside, not hunting foxes for a change, but actually hunting farmland to steal stuff from. And this gang had cost farmers £170 million. Imagine they cost 17 million. Imagine if they cost these farmers 1.7 million. Imagine 100 times less. Imagine the uproar, the people calling for their heads all over the country. How dare they target farmers like this? How dare they go after hard-working, get up at 4 in the morning, every morning to milk the bloody cows. Imagine going after farmers like that and costing collectively the farming industry, the people who actually work our fields and look after the cattle and the sheep and all that stuff. Imagine £170 million, even 1.7 million. Would be a national outrage. There would be a national outrage about it. And yet here we have the Tories who have done exactly that. They've stolen that money from us. Money that we're not getting back. What's happened in the last 17 years is the amount of money that our country has been producing has actually been increasing, but it's all gone. It all goes out of the country. We're basically... imagine you're trying to fill a bath and there's someone there with a big bowl and they keep dipping it in the water and throwing it over their shoulder. The bath never fills. And you're like, there's still water coming in. Why isn't the bath filling? Well, Because you see the guy who's got the bowl. He's a Tory. He's a Tory voter, Tory supporter, Tory funder, Russian oligarch perhaps, but his money is going out of the country. It's going into bank accounts in the Caymans, in the British Virgin Islands, in Monaco, in Switzerland. It's going to Russia, paying possibly for their terrorist campaign against the people of Ukraine. It's all going. And that's why our economy hasn't grown. It's not because people are unemployed, because that's not how it works. It's not because, people are lazy, because that's not how it works. It's because the rich keep stealing money from us and taking it out of the country. And they've stolen trillions over the last 14 years. And a lot of people have left them and gone, oh yeah, this is great. This makes me feel really good about being British. And screamed sovereignty from the hillsides, from the rooftops, from beacon to beacon, sovereignty. Well, we've got no food, but we've got sovereignty. We've got 3 million people using food banks, sovereignty. We've got an NHS that's falling apart. People waiting 2 years for a hip operation, sovereignty. People waiting more than 63 days to get a cancer diagnosis, sovereignty. People having to drill their own teeth, sovereignty. Do you feel the sovereignty in your mouth as you're in agony every day because you can't see a bloody dentist? Oh, you can if you're rich, because let's face it, none of this affects the rich. Not one iota. The rich are sitting pretty with their overseas bank accounts, making loads of money out of what we can only describe as disaster capitalism. And the disaster capitalist chickens have come home to roost. And we are left cleaning up the mess that these effers have left for us to clean up. Right. Okay, so, morning everyone in the chat. Did you see Tice trying to gaslight Gemma Forte? Got his backside handed to him. Gemma is an absolute bloody legend. And yes, I did see that on the Jeremy Vine show. Well worth checking out if you can find that clip. Gemma, Marina and Zoe taking the fight to these shitty grifters, says Michael. Yes, absolutely. And let's hope that they... when Labour win the next election, which is pretty solid now, it looks like it's going to happen. I mean, I'll be very, very surprised and upset and kind of devastated on multiple levels if they don't win after what they've had to do in order to win. The contortions they've had to twist themselves in order to win, which we'll talk about in a moment, actually. But yeah, I hope that when Labour are in, then Zoe and Marina and Gemma and Supertansky and everyone else who's sticking it to the Tories right now continue what they're doing. I hope that they continue to hold Labour to account and say, Labour, you need to do X, Y, Z, or you're not doing what we want from you. And I think that's a really important role. So it's really important that people see that this election, whether it's in May or whether it's in November, it's looking like May. It's not the end of it. We've got to keep fighting every day. That's it. There's a great clip from Jon Stewart that was on last week when he returned to the Daily Show. He said one thing he's learned from his 10 years away is that you can't stop fighting. You have to fight every day. You can't just go, oh, gay marriage, okay, we're done now. Because they'll move on to something else like they did with the transphobes. They said, okay, we're going to be transphobic now. No one had a problem with it before. Suddenly, it's the worst thing in the world that a trans woman uses what they deem as the wrong bathroom, or maybe the bathroom that they feel safest to use. But we don't want that. We don't want their safety. No. You're making me feel uncomfortable. And just to take this, anyone watching this who's still a little bit, in thrall of this transphobic nonsense, this Putinist agenda to divide and destroy. Just think of it this way. Imagine if you objected to black people using the same toilet as you in a public place because you were scared of black people because black people might commit a crime against you. How awful would that make you as a person? Yeah, do you see what I'm getting at here? I don't see any difference. Honestly, I do not see any difference. It's bigotry, it's prejudice, and it's disgusting. Needs to stop. Johnny, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Johnny, you are super, uber, mega generous. Thank you very much. Rishi got a surprisingly polite reaction at the NFU conference. I was expecting someone to drench him in slurry. That would have been good. The rural vote for the Tories has absolutely collapsed. It's gone down to something like 5%. It's like, honestly, the Tories are not well liked, and possibly this new story, which I'll link to in the description after I finish the show, about these Brexit red tape costs. A lot of farmers went for Brexit. They thought that Brexit was going to help them. When we were doing the pubcast shows, and you can watch them still on this channel. There's one where we went to Wales and we talked to a sheep farmer in Wales about what Brexit was going to mean, and also why some of his fellow farmers voted for Brexit in the first place. And there was a lot about the common agricultural policy and a kind of like not understanding of the way it works and how it actually benefits farmers. And one of the things was like, they had to pay for clips to go in the ears of the sheep or the ears of the so they know which one's been checked out by vets and all that kind of stuff. And it cost like a couple of quid for each one of these clips. And that was an added expense that they didn't want to have to pay. But okay, so you've taken away the clips, but now if you try and sell any of your produce in the EU, you're having to pay literally 170 million over 3 years extra collectively as farmers and producers, food producers. So it's like, oh, this used to cost me £2, now it costs me £10, and I'm not making any profit whatsoever on whatever I'm selling on my produce. I mean, it is incredibly infuriating, and the National Farmers Union voted for it, says Gary Arnold. Did they actually? Because I know that they should have been way stronger telling people not to vote for Brexit, especially farmers telling them not to vote for Brexit, not to put up signs all the way along the motorway, as you might have seen in June of 2016, where every farmer's field seems to have a vote leave placard in the field as you drove along. So the perception was there. If you talk to Liz Webster from Save British Farming, she has strong words to say about this idea that all farmers voted for Brexit. Not all farmers voted for Brexit. Not all boomers voted for Brexit. Not all young people voted for Boaty McVoteface. It's just a lot of them did. I think that they well and truly were led down the garden path, and they're furious about it. They're absolutely furious that the Tories lied to them and said, Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, and Nigel Farage and all his mates, he's all right. His kids have still got EU passports, don't forget. Your kids don't. If you're rich, you're fine. But if you're rich, Brexit doesn't affect you. That should be just the motto. That should be put on the side of a bus going past. Hello. Should be on the side of the bus. If you're rich, Brexit doesn't affect you. What's this? Labour being held to the higher standard than Tory. Nazi, refuck, whatever you spend to having no concept of standards. Labour should be held to a high standard, and they will be held to a high standard no matter what happens, because we're going to do it here on Labour Social. Everyone I know who makes content, left-wing content, is going to hold Labour to account. Some outfits are already holding Labour to account before they're in government. I'm kind of holding back a little bit because I want them in power, and then I think that we should start pushing them the way. We should start lobbying. Not the big oil companies, not Murdoch, but we should start lobbying so that we get, a say in what happens in the next Labour government. But let's talk for a moment about this vote today. So just to talk, go back to the horrific situation in Gaza, and it is really, really upsetting that all of the parties are playing what I see as silly political games in order to one up each other over this matter, which isn't a game. Children are dying every day in Gaza, being killed every day in Gaza. I said at the time, I think Labour should call for a ceasefire, and I stick by that. I said it back in October, and I'm still saying it now. They should call for a ceasefire. This humanitarian pause nonsense is not helpful. It's kind of, it's kind of like we want to stop firing, but a pause signifies that it's got to start again. No, we want a ceasefire, stop killing people in Gaza, let's find another way out of this mess that doesn't involve bombing hospitals, right? So, what's going to happen today? Let me take a sip of my tea before I go on to this. So, I might be a bit prickly about this subject because it's particularly upsetting. It's particularly wrong, outrageously wrong that politicians are using this to their political advantage. So, what's happened is there's going to be a vote today. The SNP have put in an amendment to the bill, and Labour put in their own amendment, both calling for a ceasefire. But the SNP bill says that the Israelis are committing collective punishment to the people in Gaza, which I actually agree with. I can see that. But from a legalistic point of view and from a diplomatic point of view, that's not the best way to ask for something. You're asking Israel to stop killing Gaza. If you are asking anyone for anything and you say, but also we think that you are a bag of shit. Did I tell you how much of a bag of shit you are? Can I have that thing now, please? It's not the way you do diplomacy. And I hate that these are games that politicians play, diplomats play, whatever. But we hold no cards in this. Absolutely no cards whatsoever. The British government cannot stop Netanyahu. The American government cannot stop Netanyahu. I mean, you've got a mad situation now where you've got the President of the United States asking the UN to ask for a ceasefire. And it's like, why didn't you do that back in October? Oh, well, he hadn't killed enough children then. And you didn't see what was going to happen. You do know that Netanyahu in the past, in the 90s, had talked about literally wiping Gaza off the map. Like, that was his objective back in the 90s. Do you think things have changed as he's got older? Do you think he's mellowed out? Is that what people normally do? That they become more mellow as they age? No. He's got his opportunity. He was handed his opportunity on a silver platter by Hamas, by the atrocities they committed on October the 7th, and he has run with it. Probably more so than Hamas thought that he would actually do, to be honest with you. But still, no one looks good coming out of this. So the SNP have put in a motion, an amendment. The Labour Party have put in a very, very similar amendment. The only real difference is calling for a ceasefire, not calling for a humanitarian pause, calling for a ceasefire. But it doesn't say in that bill, in the amendment, it doesn't say in the amendment that it doesn't accuse Israel of collective punishment, which is a war crime. Because diplomacy. You don't want to say, hey, stop Kimby, so we can put you on trial for the war crimes you are obviously committing. You don't say that bit. At least you don't say it out loud, and you don't put it in the amendment. The SNP have put that in the amendment because they know that will make it difficult for a lot of the Labour leadership to vote for that amendment. And it's also going to make it difficult for MPs within Labour not to vote for it because it's calling for a ceasefire. The government, the bloody Tories, have put in another amendment, a third amendment, which doesn't call for a ceasefire and it calls for a humanitarian pause. So here's the problem. The Speaker can pick two amendments. The amendment for the SNP has already been chosen. So you've got these two amendments that Lindsay Hoyle, our favourite Speaker of all time, has to choose from to add on to debate today, to vote on, right? You've got the government amendment, which doesn't call for a ceasefire, calls for a humanitarian pause. And then you've got the Labour amendment, which does call for a ceasefire, but doesn't accuse Israel of war crimes at the same time because of reasons of diplomacy. And, can you stop killing people? But if you're going to put me if you're going to put me in court for killing people, then I'm not going to stop. Do you see? Lindsay Hoyle's probably going to pick the government's amendment because that's traditionally what the Speaker does. If there's two amendments and one is from the opposition and one is from the government, they will traditionally pick the government amendment. He could, I believe, pick all three, which would be the best solution to this political bullshit dilemma, right? We're dealing with semantics. We're dealing with semantics in a life and death, literally life and death situation. So The SNP are trying to put Labour into a trap because Labour are their biggest opposition in Scotland. The Tories are not going to win much in Scotland at all, but Labour are going to take, by the looks of things, over half of the SNP's seats away. This is because of unforced errors and own goals by the SNP. The Tories, meanwhile, are trying to put Labour in a trap. And Labour are sitting there going, shit. And they're going to come out of this looking crap pretty much no matter what they do. You're going to have Labour MPs saying, I can't vote for this, I can't vote for that, I can't abstain. It's going to be possibly a real shitfest, right? And you're going to have a lot of Labour voters who are hanging by a thread right now because they're on the left of the party and they are absolutely devastated by what is happening in Gaza. They are eternally frustrated at the fact that Labour haven't been calling for a ceasefire from the start, which, I think is a mistake. I think that was a huge mistake by Labour. It wouldn't be what I would do if I was in charge of Labour or Labour comms or the way Labour put themselves across. But Labour's stuffed because if it votes for the SNP motion, it's voting to say for an amendment to a bill that says that declares that Israel is committing war crimes, which, yes, they probably are, but we have to follow the whole innocence until proven guilty. This went to the International Court of Justice in a case brought by South Africa, and it wasn't like they said, oh yeah, definitely this is definitely a case of genocide, it's definitely a case of collective punishment, this is definitely a case of war crimes. They didn't say that. They didn't say it wasn't. They didn't throw the case out. They said, we're going to monitor the situation very closely and come to some conclusions in the future, essentially, which is going to be, Netanyahu, when this war finishes and he's out of power, he's going to jail for the rest of his life. He was anyway. The only reason why the war is going as horrifically as it is because Netanyahu is trying to save his own skin. He's doing exactly what Trump is doing in America. He's using the deaths of innocent people to protect himself from going to jail. And Trump, that's in the future. If Trump gets in, obviously he's going to withdraw support for Taiwan. He's going to withdraw support for Ukraine. Literally millions will die as a result of what Russia and China will do next if the USA does what the Putinist Trump wants to do, and which is to withdraw from the world and withdraw from NATO. I mean, we're in a world of shit if that happens. But the situation today, I don't know what's going to happen. I hope that Lindsay Hoyle says, right, we're going to vote on all three amendments. All three amendments have merit. I'm going to vote for all three of them, and then Labour can just vote for their own amendment, which calls for a ceasefire. If they're not allowed to call for their own, if they're not allowed to vote for their own amendment, it's going to be very difficult. They don't want to support the Tories, obviously, and also they don't want to go along with the SNP amendment because it's declaring a country guilty of war crimes before there's been a trial, essentially. Right, have we got through that? Can we move on to funnier things now? It's Wednesday, says One Angry Pagan. By including that extra clause, the SNP have really gone down in my estimation. The political naivety is staggering. Yeah, but it's not. This is the annoying thing. FT they're not doing it for the people of Gaza. They're not doing it to protect babies in the hospitals in Rafah, which are about to be bulldozed by the IDF. They're not doing it for them. They're doing it for their own political greed, for their own political shenanigans. You say it is naive, but they know it's not going to get through. They know it's not going to get the votes to go through because the Tories aren't going to vote for it. The Tories have the majority. This is performative politics to make Labour look bad. The Greens have done this as well. The Greens did this. Remember with that fatal motion that they brought in the House of Lords under Jenny Jones, the Green Brexiteer, and it was just all set up to make Labour look bad because they were like, oh no, we can put this motion and it will stop this bill in its tracks. It won't. It would have made it go back to the House of Commons where the Tories would have voted on it instantly and it would have gone back to the House of Lords. That's all that would have happened. It would have held it up for a day or so. It wasn't as fatal as it made it sound. Because just to go back to what happened in that situation, The bill, there was some statutory instruments that were added to the bill when it, before it got to the House of Lords. They're normally signed off on. They don't need to be voted on. It's just a little bit of an amendment to a bill. But if you make a big song and dance about it, you can say, no, you've got to vote on this, which the Tories would have done. They had an 80-seat majority once. That's about 50 seats, maybe less. There you go. Questionable Absanity. Thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Really appreciate that. Was the title thumbnail Boris dressed as Victoria? Are we to expect Ruler Lenska to feed him next? No. It was it's Pennywise from the remake of It, not the classic TV movie of It with Tim Curry. Although the second half of that is very, very ropey. But yes, it's from the movies It. Labour don't need help to look bad. Yeah, I don't know. Breaking news, looks like a spring GE is definitely on. I just had a Conservative persuasion flyer posted through my door. Yeah, but everyone's saying that we're looking like a May. It's looking like a May election. Labour need to give their MPs a free vote. That way the leadership doesn't get the blame. It also might shut up that turd, Owen Jones. Yeah. And I mean, if we're going to play politics, the SNP amendment's not going to get through. It's not going to get through. They don't have the numbers. The Tories aren't going to vote for it. They're not going to have the numbers to get it through. So yeah, give them a free vote. If your conscience wants you to go and vote for that, then sure, go ahead and vote for it. But I hate this. It's one of the people go, okay, we should go into politics. I'm like, no, I don't like it. I hate all this shit. I'm quite a straight talking person. I like finding things to do and then doing them. I don't go, oh, let's sit around and talk for like 3 hours about it. I can't be dealing with it. I'll let other people do it. And one of the things I really, really couldn't do is vote against my conscience. And so we have a thing in government with collective responsibility. So if you decide, the cabinet decide anything, the government decide to do anything, everyone takes responsibility for it equally, apparently. And I know it doesn't really work like that in real life, but imagine when I used to do debating back in university, I always found it really hard to be passionate and make a good argument for something that I didn't personally believe in. When you do debating competitions, you're literally given a topic, and if you're in the opposition, someone might stand up and say we should legalize gay marriage, and then you have to make an argument about why we should not legalize gay marriage, which is something that actually happened to us, because I was on a debating team with Rob Rinder, who's now Judge Rinder and writes books and stuff, a wonderful bloke. He's a really, really, really top bloke. And I remember that actually happened when we were debating in Oxford. So it was like, this house believes in true love or something like that. They always make the title quite vague. And then the proposition stand up and they make their case. They made their case for marriage, right? And everyone's looking at Rob, who's obviously gay, because he's the first opposition on the team. And he has to stand up and make a case to keep gay marriage illegal as a gay man. And because he's a genius, he just pivoted and he said, on this side of the house, we believe that all marriage should be banned because it's a terrible idea. And then he went off on about how bad an idea marriage is and how many end in divorce and how many people are unhappy and how many people get their feet under the table and let it all go once they're married because they don't have to try anymore. And it was brilliant. It was like, nice one, mate. But still, having someone who is a big proponent of gay marriage, having to stand up and make an argument against it, is just, it's cringe for me. I hate that. And the thing with politics, you're never going to get everything that you want. And I think there's a lot of absolutists on the left who, and on the right as well, but particularly on the left at the moment because they're in focus, who want a shopping list full of things. And they're like, if I don't get everything on this shopping list, I'm not just going to not vote Labour. I'm going to go on YouTube and complain about Labour every day for the rest of eternity until the heat death of the universe. And I don't think that's particularly helpful. I understand politics is the art of compromise, but I think there's a limit where you say, okay, well, I didn't get this, didn't get that, I didn't get the things that I wanted, but I got like 50% of the things I wanted. Great. But yeah, having to argue for things that you just don't want. No. No, 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 no. Just not going to happen. Okay, so let's quickly do the papers. We're 3 minutes past 10, so boom. We've got Putin's Brit targets here. This is a really chilling story about 12 people who are on a hit list, who live in the UK, who are going to be targeted by Putin's goons, just like the Skripals were, leading to the death of Dawn Sturgis. I don't think Boris Johnson probably knows that woman's name, but she was a British citizen who was killed by Russian agents on British soil. That our esteemed leader Boris Johnson, he in order to get back at Russia after that, he went to a party hosted by a Russian agent and his son for 2 days, 3 day, was it a 3-day party? Sex, hookers, sex trafficked women, abused women, cocaine, lots of cocaine, all the booze you can drink. And he left his security detail behind. He actually came from a NATO meeting to discuss the attempted murder of the Skripals and the actual murder of Dawn Sturgis. But yeah. The Putinist wing of the Conservative Party. Prince issues Gaza plea for permanent peace. This is a really good thing that the Prince of Wales has done, and it dominates a lot of the front covers on the headlines here. We've got William fighting in Gaza must be brought to an end. Absolutely, the king in waiting, the prince's place to be saying stuff like this. This does make me worry for Prince Charles, and I'm not a monarchist, but I've lost close members of my family to cancer. It is not. It's not an illness that I would wish on my worst enemy. Maybe Putin, maybe Trump, but I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And this seems to me that Prince William is basically having to step up because his dad is not in a good way. He must be undergoing some pretty horrific treatment if he's having to do meetings with the Prime Minister over the phone. So you're talking radiotherapy where you're actually radioactive after the treatment, maybe chemotherapy. I don't know. I hope he's all right. Anyway, great. This is a good example of soft power, soft diplomacy. Basically, the prince, who has no real political power, saying, "Will you stop killing people, please? That would be nice." PM, completely ridiculous for illegal immigrants to jump the queue. There is no queue. There is no queue. There is no queue. Because I say this, but there is no queue because you can't get asylum in this country unless you step foot on the soil of this country. There's no queue. It's not like there's a queue of people outside an embassy in Nairobi waiting for asylum. And these people are jumping ahead of them magically in a boat across the channel. It's not happening. It's a myth. It's a lie propagated by Fleet Street and the dickheads who run our country. William, too many people have died in Gaza conflict. That's putting it mildly. And there was a really disturbing story here. A Jewish couple received birth certificate with the word Israel scrubbed out, which I don't know what's happened there, but that is that's true. That's pretty bleak. Do you know what I mean? That's one step away from people, I don't know, defacing people's houses with swastikas and things like that. And then biographer Tom Baldwin in The Guardian has got the case for Keir Starmer, which might be good to read later today. Labour leader faces threat of revolt over Gaza despite call for ceasefire. Exactly, that's what we've been talking about. And there's a really important story here. NHS adopts Martha's rule in 100 hospitals. This is a sad story of Meripy Mills, whose daughter Martha died at the age of 12 after falling off her bike. She suffered internal injuries that it wasn't picked up by the hospital, and it was the bank holiday weekend. Like, everything that could go wrong went wrong, but Meripy wasn't in a place, her mother was not in a place where she could get a second opinion. So what this rule is going to do is allow parents to officially request a second opinion in situations where they think that things aren't going right for their child, which is desperately needed, and it's just so sad that it took Martha's death for this to happen. I've got a personal connection with this because I went to university with Meripy as well. So I'll move on. black hole in the middle of the universe. I love the star. William weighed in. Too many have been killed in Gaza. Yeah, I think one is too many, to be honest with you, but let's not split hairs over this. I'm glad he's actually said something. And the post office scandal, again, Cameron's government knew. Ministers told in 2016 how investigations that could have helped thousands was ditched. This is to do with the ongoing investigation at the time into Fujitsu and whether they could change the figures remotely, change the accounts remotely from the Fujitsu headquarters to the actual post offices around the country. And they claimed for years that they could not change those figures remotely, but it turns out that they actually can. Oh, and just to make you feel a little less secure, it turns out, this is according to Ollie Bowler Hatman, we were talking about this in Geoscope last night, he reckons that there is a God mode in Twitter which allows Elon Musk to tweet from anyone's account and make it look like a real tweet, which is quite disturbing because Elon Musk is a drug-addled lunatic. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's lost it. Barclays put to return 10 billion to investors in push for new revenues and balance. That's from that's from the Financial Times. And obviously, I mean, even the banks, I think, are feeling the pinch of Brexit, which is surprising because you think they would love this kind of disaster capitalism. Anyway, so moving on, we're gonna wrap up now because it is 10 past. I've gone on a little bit longer than normal. How long will King Charlie last? What are the latest odds at Paddy Power? I don't know. I predict less than 5 years on the throne. About 2 years ago now. The gods don't give an F about politics. I'm only interested in making sure my people don't get discriminated against. Well, yeah, discrimination is something that we need to battle whoever's being unfairly discriminated against. And isn't it interesting that when people who are on the right feel like they're being discriminated against? I love the fact that Lawrence Fox, privately educated multimillionaire, failed actor, failed musician, failed politician, Lawrence Fox sued for £2 million for calling people paedophiles because he's a rat bag. He feels that people have discriminated against him. He feels like, as a rich white person, he's discriminated against, and it's like, oh mate, where do you even start with that? Where do you start with? Anyway, they still get their bonuses, Graham. Yeah, I'm sure they do. William speaking out angered the concrete farmer. That's from Nick Wilson. That's in reference to the idiot Mike Graham, who is an idiot. he's the idiot. He's the guy on talk radio who said that you can grow concrete. And we've got a former Tory minister in the form of Neanderthal who thinks that we can grow coal onto the ground. These people are idiots. Thanks, anyone. See you sooner rather than later. I gave up on Twitter and moved to Blue Sky Social. Yes, we'll have a look at that. And Threads as well, but Threads is owned by Zuckerberg, and it's just, nothing's ideal, is it? We had our lofty ideals when the internet age first began, but now it's not so rosy. Okay, it's like you're saying that you said first, Graham, according to Aid Thompson. What's that? If you're used to privilege, your equality feels like oppression. I'm definitely not the first person to say that, despite what Aid Thompson is winding me up trying to put on social media. Now I'm wondering if bioconcrete is theoretically possible, says Grimfang. Brexit also screwed the UK banking sector with the loss of passporting. The beneficiaries were hedge funds, O'Day and all, who shorted the pound and other UK assets. Yeah, indeed. Mike Graham, half man, half gastropod, says back up uni. Right, I'm going to leave it there. I'll be back at 12 o'clock for Prime Minister's Questions. At 12 o'clock today, we'll be doing the old commentary on that, trying to make it a little bit more bearable than it normally is. So if you want to join us for that, you're very welcome to. Give us a like on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. And consider becoming a patron of the channel. I'll add your name at the end of this. If you've become a patron in the last couple of months and I haven't added your name to the credits at the end, I will be doing that at some point this week. Just remind me. I've actually written it in big letters on my pad here. It says, update list of patrons. But there you go. You don't want to see my scorny handwriting. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. And until next time, hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.